Before I get into some of the more lesser known characters in the division, I want to make sure I've covered the main parts of the storyline first, as most of these individuals line up with the main story in one way or another. And if you're anything like me, you've spent so many hundreds of hours obsessing over gear and builds that you've long since forgotten the full detail of the main storyline. So for the next couple of videos I'll be talking about things you may already know, but bear with me, we'll be getting into the cool stuff soon. The Cleaners. Misunderstood good guys, or straight up evil villains running amok on the streets of Manhattan? Well, actually, they're a bit of both. The Cleaners originated as the blue-collar workers of New York City. Janitors, sanitation, garbage men, electricians, construction workers, truck drivers. These are the people that the government originally asked to assist in saving the city, through transport, digging of mass graves, and eventually the construction of the wall that would surround the quarantine zone. These are the groups that continued to support the civil services when the city infrastructure was breaking down. Unfortunately, these are also some of the people that were left behind when the JTF and government pulled out of the dark zone. And much like the first wave division agents, these men were left feeling betrayed and abandoned. It was at this point that an individual by the name of Joe Farrow steps up and organizes these abandoned workers into a force that would do what was needed to contain the virus and restore order to the streets of New York City. Before the outbreak, Joe Farrow lived and worked in Manhattan with his wife as a sanitation worker. He was a family-orientated man, a devout husband, and he cared deeply for his niece. Farrow was always particularly vocal about his opinions and frequently called into live radio broadcasts to share his point of view with the American public. When the dollar flu outbreak first hit, Farrow's wife was one of the first victims to become infected, and shortly after succumbed to the virus. After this, Farrow's mindset towards the country and its government started to change. He calls into a radio broadcast to share his opinion.
Sounds like we have an old-timer on the line, Joseph Farrow. Hey Joe, what's your take on the dollar flu?
I think this really shows how vulnerable this country is. I mean, how stupid you have to be not to go to the hospital when you're sick as a dog. We got people going to work, to the supermarket, even to the goddamn movies, infecting thousands of other people out of pure ignorance. I'm telling you, this is gonna blow up big time. Just because most people are too damn stupid to realize what's going on. There's no one with the balls, not the government, not nobody, and the brains to do what's got to be done to keep this from spreading.
Sorry to cut you off there, Joe. Thanks as always for your thoughts.
As more and more people started to get infected and more bodies started lining the streets, Farrow's mental state continued to slide too. With his wife now dead, he continues to think that the government isn't doing anything to stop the virus. His thoughts are that no one else is brave enough to do anything about it. With all his faith in the government lost, he takes the matters into his own hands. He assembles the men and women who worked alongside the JTF and the government before they left. He proceeds to tell them that there is now only one way to stop the virus. Burn it. Burn all of it. Burn every trace of it. And thus, the Cleaners were born. Unlike the other factions, the Cleaners were assembled with the intentions of doing good. Farrow strongly believes that they are the true heroes, fighting against the virus on the front lines. He's constantly stating that they're the ones leaving everything they had behind, just so they can stay in New York and do what has to be done. Because of his wife, Farrow has seen what the virus can do firsthand, and he is convinced that there is no saving people once they're infected. Given that the government has fled the quarantine zone, he decides that it's up to him and the Cleaners to stop the virus and get control back of the city, and that there is no one else brave enough to take the necessary steps to stop this thing once and for all. Not only is he convinced that they're the good guys, but he continues to convince others too. His followers hold a lot of respect for him because of commitment and dedication to his goals.
You gotta give it to Farrow. When he says he wants something done, he gets it done. What I like is that he's out here doing it with us. He's out on the streets. Yeah, and he gets his hands dirty. Never asks a guy to do what he won't do himself. Ain't that the truth?
Through Farrow's guidance, the Cleaners' weapon of choice is fire. Fire is the ultimate cleaning tool, so everything that's come in contact with the virus must burn. From parts and pieces they find lying around, they create their signature weapon, the flamethrower. They develop a recipe for napalm and they construct their own hazmat suits. Their goal? Purify the city by burning away impurities and corruption. The cleaners are devoted to their job, and if anyone gets in their way, they're part of the problem and are swiftly dealt to. They travel from area to area cleansing the streets. If there is any evidence of contamination, they won't hesitate in setting ablaze cars or even buildings full of people, as in their eyes, the sick are already dead, and they're doing humanity a favour by stopping the spread of the virus. However, there are a couple of problems with this method of purifying and cleansing of the virus. Firstly, the cleaners can't really tell if people are infected. They're no doctors. They're just looking out for the smallest thing that could be a sign. Feeling a little run down and showing signs of fatigue? Too bad. Better safe than sorry. And secondly, as JTF virologist Jessica Kendall mentions, their methods are actually making the situation far worse from a virologist's point of view. Their goal of wiping out the virus by burning everything in sight actually severely hinders any efforts towards creating a vaccine to help keep it from spreading. The second wave division agents first encounter the cleaners in an underground subway network. The cleaners were tasked with purifying the area by burning everything and everyone there. Although their goal was to retrieve Paul Rhodes, the division agents stopped the cleaners from achieving their task and quickly eliminate them from the site. The cleaners then attack the Hudson refugee camp, but again, the division agents and the JTF managed to stop them before the entire site is put up in flames. From the information gathered, the division identified the source of the virus, Abel's department store. Agents were sent forth to gather some samples of the original affected dollar bills, but the cleaners were already there, setting the entire mall ablaze.
Okay, Agent, you're looking for any bills our pal Amherst used to spread his original virus strain. We know he used Abel's as one of his primary launching pads, so with any luck, there should be plenty of contaminated greenbacks lying around in there.
As well as civilians. The store is one of the bigger refugee camps we've been monitoring.
Not to make a whole thing out of it, but if you don't find some unmutated virus I can use as a comp, we may as well give up any hope of creating a vaccine. So, no pressure.
But yet again, the superior training and equipment of the SHD agents pushed the cleaners back, and were able to secure the samples. It was at this point that the division realised that the hostile faction, known as the Cleaners, were far more organised than initially thought, and they were not going anywhere. They needed to be dealt to. After the JTF discovered the Cleaners' headquarters and that this was also their source of napalm production, the division agents were sent in to shut them down. As well as putting a stop to their napalm production, the agents also found Joe Farrow himself. After a small conflict, the leader of the Cleaners was eventually killed by the division agents. With their source of napalm destroyed and their leader assassinated, the Cleaners were demoralised. But regardless, the Cleaners continued to push on, believing deeply in their goals of doing what no one else has the guts to do. They showed their ingenuity by building their own superweapon, the Dragon. A fire truck. No, a literal fire truck. With an enormous flamethrower and flaming mortar equipped, this was to be used to clear out large areas and buildings more efficiently, allowing them to cover more ground. Although well defended, this too was intercepted by the division agents before it was ever able to be unleashed into Manhattan. After this defeat, the Cleaners scattered into smaller groups around New York City. It's unknown who is leading them at this stage, but they have come to some sort of truce with the LMB and Rikers, as they can be seen working together in the West Side Pier. Although their threat seems to have been considerably reduced after the loss of Joe Farrow and the destruction of their superweapon, any remaining Cleaners at this point still seem very much committed to Farrow's goal of burning out the virus and anyone who stands in their way. The Cleaners were assembled in an attempt to save the city. Unfortunately, their misguided methods had them set on a more brutal, genocidal path. But it leaves me wondering one thing. Regardless of their methods, did the Cleaners actually help stop the virus from becoming more widely spread early on? Yes, they almost stopped a cure from being developed, and they killed hundreds, maybe thousands of non-sick innocents. But had they not been around when the virus was most rampant, would the situation in New York and potentially the neighbouring states be in a much worse state right now? So what do you think? Are the Cleaners the misguided, misunderstood heroes of this battle against the green poison? Or are they simply just a bunch of psychopathic pyromaniacs that were brought together by a mentally unstable, grief-stricken husband? Let me know what you think. Cheers!
Uncle Joe, is that you?
Yeah, sweetheart, it's me. How are you, kiddo?
I'm good.
Mommy and Daddy feeling okay?
Yeah, but we've been sitting at home for days, Uncle Joe. It's boring.
I bet it is, kiddo. Hey, listen. I want to tell you something. You know how sometimes Uncle Joe is on the radio?
Yeah?
Well, it might be that I'll be on the radio again soon. Or the people will talk about me there. And they might say things that aren't true.
Okay.
Well, whatever they may say, I want you to know. I want you to remember that I only ever wanted you to be safe. Everything I'm doing, all the good and bad, is so you could be safe. Okay?
Okay.
That's my girl. Gotta go now. I love you.